We've already spent some time learning how to analyze data and use data to test a claim. Now we're going to learn about how scientists, researchers, and statisticians collect data. So, Chapter 4 is all about different ways that we can collect data. And we're going to start in Lesson 4.1 by identifying statistical versus non statistical questions and some other vocabulary that we use throughout this chapter. So, in statistics, there really are only certain types of questions that are worth our time to investigate. And you have a page that's at the very back of your packet. And so you can flip there and just go ahead and tear off that last page. And there are several different types of questions on that page. But what you're going to do is cut those apart and you're going to try to sort them into two different groups according to some characteristic that they all have in common. And this might be sort of difficult, but I would recommend that you try it at home and see if you can sort them into two groups. And you're going to then try to attempt to classify them into statistical versus non-statistical questions. So go ahead and pause the video and try to do that, and then you can restart it and see how you did. Okay, here's the questions from the back of your packet. And the way that we separated them into two groups is by putting these questions together. So the first one that I picked out was, which musical artist or group has the most downloads on iTunes? Who won the 2016 NBA championship? How many points did the football team score on Friday? How old is this school building? How many snow days did we have last year? And how many students in this class ate breakfast this morning? Now, the one thing that all of these questions, these six, have in common is that they all have one right answer. So if you were to go up to any particular person and ask them, who won the 2016 NBA championship? They might not know the answer, but there is only one right answer to that question. How old is this school building is the same thing. You can go up to any person, and if they know the right answer, there is only one right answer to that question. How many students in this class ate breakfast this morning? We could answer by just taking a quick survey. And maybe in a class of 25, we might find that 14 of them ate breakfast. But there is one right answer to that question. So those are not questions that in statistics we typically care about too much, because when there's only one answer to the question, once we know it, there's not much we can do with it. The other questions, however, have many right answers. So for example, if we look at the question, how old is your parents? If I were to go up to 25 different students and ask them, how old are your parents? They could each give me the right answer, and those right answers would be different for everyone. If we look at the question, where are students in this class going to college next year? Again, if we go up and ask lots of different students, we're going to get lots of different answers. Somebody might say Michigan, Michigan State, Central Michigan, Western, and all of those are correct, but everybody has a different answer correct for themselves. So all the rest of these are questions that have more than one right answer. In other words, their answers vary. And that's what we care about in statistics. So in number 2, how can we tell the difference between a statistical and a non-statistical question? Statistical questions have answers that vary, and statistics is all about the study of variation. Non-statistical questions only have one correct answer. So we will then kind of define that along with some other words that we're going to use throughout chapter 4. So again, statistical questions are questions that have answers that vary. Non-statistical questions only have one correct answer. For example, how old are you is statistical, because when I go up to 25 different people, I might get 25 different correct answers. How old is Tom Brady is non-statistical, right? There's only one answer to that question, even though not everybody will know it. Now, in statistics, a lot of times we want to talk about populations and samples. So populations are the whole group about which we want to know something. And oftentimes we ask statistical questions to a population or to part of a population because we want to know something about them. A population does not have to be people. It could be a population of bees in a beehive, for example. And maybe we want to know how much the bees in the beehive weigh. A sample is a subset of the population from which we actually collect information. Maybe our beehive has 10,000 bees in it. We can't possibly weigh all 10,000 bees, but we could take a small group of bees and weigh them. And the small group that we weigh would be our sample. Now, if we are able to collect information from the whole population, that's what we call a census. And you may be familiar with the term census because the United States government conducts a census every 10 years where they attempt to collect information from every person living in the United States. Now, we can also collect data in different ways. Besides doing a census, we could do either an observational study or an experiment. An observational study is where we collect information from a group by observing things that already happened. And that might be by watching people or things. It might be by giving them a survey and asking them questions, either by mail, by email, or just face to face. An experiment happens when we deliberately do something to a group and measure their response as a way to collect information. And we'll talk about experiments toward the end of the chapter. We're going to work a little bit more on observational studies and surveys toward the beginning of this chapter, but both are good ways to collect information. Now, in example one, we're just going to identify each question as statistical or non-statistical. Letter A, who won the 2016 NBA championship? That is a non-statistical question because it only has one right answer. Letter B, where did players in the NBA go to college? That would be statistical. Each player has their own college that they graduated from. How many fans attended NBA games in the 2016 season? This would also be statistical. Each game or each different arena in each city might be different, and so that answer will vary by game. How many total points did Steph Curry score in the 2016 season? The key word here is total. Even though the number of points that he scores in each game is going to vary a little bit, there is only one total number of points because the season has already ended. And because there's only one total and that answer does not vary, that would be a non-statistical question. Example 2 says identify each as an observational study or an experiment. A says a coach wonders whether her softball players hit more home runs with wooden or aluminum bats. At the end of the season, she calculates the total number of home runs hit with each type of bat and compares them. Here, it's implied that the coach is letting the players pick the type of bats they want to use. She's not instructing the players to use one type or the other. She's just observing the type of bat that they picked and how many home runs they hit. This would be an observational study. Letter B, a swimmer believes that he and his teammates swim faster when they wear a special tech suit made of water-resistant polyurethane fabric. He has half the team wear a traditional suit and half wear a tech suit at the next practice. All the swimmers swim 100 yards and they calculate the average time of each group to compare. In this case, we are assigning the swimmers to wear a certain type of suit, and so this would therefore be an experiment. Finally, in example 3, we're going to identify the population and the sample in each setting. Letter A wildlife scientist tranquilizes 42 grizzly bears in Alaska, records their weights, and then releases them. Here, the scientist is sampling 42 grizzly bears. And we're imagining here that they're doing that because they want to use the weights of those 42 bears to try to estimate what all the bears weigh in Alaska. And of course, it's not possible to catch and weigh all the bears in the state of Alaska. So our population would be all the grizzly bears in Alaska. And notice that we're being very specific here. So we're saying all the grizzly bears in Alaska. We're not really trying to make any conclusions about all grizzly bears in the world because we're not taking samples from all over the world. We're only taking our sample from the state of Alaska. Our sample then is the 42 bears that we caught and tranquilized. A high school student randomly selects 15 Beyonce songs from iTunes to add to a playlist. Here, the population would be all the Beyonce songs on iTunes. The sample would just be the 15 songs that the student selected. In part C, it says 100 batteries from a factory in Texas are tested to determine how long they last while being used in a video game controller. Here, our population is all the batteries from that particular factory, or we could say all the batteries from the factory in Texas. And the sample is the 100 batteries that are tested. And that's often how quality control works in factories. They can't test everything that's made, but they take a small sample from across the factory and test those and use those to get an idea of the quality of all the products produced. Please do homework for lesson 4.1 in your assignment packet.